Hi guys, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to use morphs and magnets to adjust hair, clothing and furniture to fit your different characters so that they appear more realistic. So I'm going to start with this situation first. So we've got a guy over here, and if I change to this camera here, couple camera. So there are two things wrong with this scene. One is that her breast is poking through her clothing. So the first thing I'm going to do is choose a sports bra and then choose a chest. And what I could try and do is fiddle about with these breast settings here. So breast size, for example, smaller or larger. But you see the problem, as I change the size of the breast, the bra is affecting the underlying figure geometry. So I'm making the bra larger to try and wrap it around her normal sized breast, but then her actual breast is getting larger to match the clothing. So here's an easy way to fix that. If I go to Victoria, choose a body, and then go to morph up here, and I'm going to create a new morph. I'm going to call that chest in. And now you can see there's a cursor. This cursor, I could apply this anywhere on her body because I chose her body as the part I was going to work on. And what I'm going to do, ensure that this is set to push rather than pull. If I wanted to make her breast larger, I'd go the other way, I'd do pull. And I'm going to make sure it's relative to surface. That means that wherever the cursor is, the movement is going to move at 90 degrees to that selected body part. So here, any morph I do would kind of go into her leg. Here, it would go into her leg away from us in the Z direction. Here, it's just going to kind of go inside her breast here. I'm going to make sure the radius is relative to the movement I want to do. So at the scale I'm working here, that's a good scale. You don't want it too small because you're going to get lots of little digs and divots, and you don't want it too big because it's going to move all of the surrounding area as well. So I've already pre-scaled this as a reasonable size for this, and then you've got magnitude, which is how fast or slow how much of the effect it does. So I like to start smaller, not too soft because you'll be working forever, like you're working with watercolor, for example, if you're a painter, but not too hard because it will move too quick, and then you'll have to fix it. So this magnitude here, let's give this a try, and now I'm just going to kind of go over here. And you can see that the underlying breast has disappeared. It's basically morphed inside that bra top. Now, had I used the bar top to try and move, what happens is that the breast itself actually gets bigger or smaller as I use the bra morph. So this morphing tool is a more elegant way to do it. So I've done that, and you'll see here now on Victoria, I've got chest in and out morph has been added, and as I reduce that back to 0, that pokes her chest out, or I can go back to 1 or more, and 1 is 100% the effect I just did. Okay, now let's look at another situation. So we've got Michael is carrying Victoria, but his hands are buried into her. Now I could pull the hands out and then it would look like she was floating above his hands. It wouldn't look realistic. Realistically, there's some depressions in her skin caused by her weight against his hand. So let's just create that situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to select Victoria again because she's the one that I'm going to be making the changes on. And I'm just going to select her whole body. And I'm going to create another new morph. And this one's going to be called depressions. Oh, we'll call it indents. Make it a bit cheerier. Indents. There you go. So now you'll see here that the cursor is probably too big for this now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this radius down a little. So when you're doing the radius, you want the size of the thing that you want the indent, and then a little bit so that it kind of blends into the side. So if I just did the finger width, for example, so let's shrink that down. If I just did the finger width, I'll just do a bit on her leg so you can see. That's quite a sharp. Okay, you can't see that because of the skin texture. What I'll do is I'll put that on hidden line and it will make the effect more clear to see. Okay, I need to increase the magnitude for this one. That can be quite a sharp effect here. See, it's kind of rough around the edges. Whereas, if I make this radius a little bit larger than I actually need here, so now it's blending into the edges. The resolution of the mesh here is not very good. I might have to subdivide the mesh to make this soft, but let's just do this as a proof of concept. So now, again, I have it on relative to surface. So as I move around the back of her leg, it's still gonna work at right angles to the leg. And now I'm just going to paint that on so that the thumb shows. There you go. Maybe a little bit here to have some finger pressure dent. Maybe a little bit down here. So you see it's not affecting him because this is a morph for Victoria. That was the figure I selected. Okay, so let's assume that's okay. Let's just, there you go. Look, you can see that dent there. Now, supposing, let's just give that a quick render first of all. I'll just do an area render. Okay, I'm going to do a whole area, a whole render because I'm on a low resolution and it didn't show up very well. Low sample rate. I think sometimes when you render with the morph tool open, the render disappears. Let me just get rid of, don't crash. Thank you. So here's the render I just did there. I think I'm going to turn that rate up to 10, just as it's a little bit higher quality. But you can see here there's some depressions there with the thumb. The thumb's not floating, it's not buried inside out, it's not clipped inside. And we've got some light depressions there. I might even do that a little bit deeper. Let's do the other hand just so that we can see. So obviously you'd usually align the fingers and stuff kind of how you want them in the first place. But let's create a new morph. So we'll add to the morph that we've already got. It's not good practice. In fact, usually you'd create no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to create a new morph. The reason is indents left, because if the other side I was happy with that, and now I do this, I might want to apply this level of effect here to a different rate to the rate that I did the other hand. So here, I'm just going to paint that on a bit. Maybe went a little bit too hard there. Let's do that thumb. I probably would need to move that thumb a little bit anyway. Pose that thumb. Okay, that looks pretty good actually. So here, so now I can have less of that effect. See, I'm bringing that back in until it looks kind of natural. But supposing I thought that's a little bit harsh here. We got some weird effects here caused by the low polygon rate. Look here, there's not really an awful lot of polygons here. So what I might do is I'll go into my morph tool again with that morph selected. So I can select different morphs and the body's got morphs already. So I'm going to select the morph that we just created, which is called indents L. And then there's some additional ones here. So I can use flatten to just flatten the whole thing out. Or I can use smooth, which just kind of takes, oh, look how big that cursor is. Each tool has got its own cursor size. So I'm just going to take that radius down. Okay, a bit smaller still. I like to test the radius size by just looking on the scene. And now what this is going to do is this is going to smooth this effect out a little bit. So just gently add this. Okay, maybe a bit more magnitude. Okay, that's maximum. And for those of you who are used to 3D modeling, this is the equivalent of the relax command, where it brings the vertices more in line with each other. What it actually does is brings the vertices that we moved back more to their original position, which has the effect of just smoothing the whole thing out. Okay, so that's one example, two examples actually. One where we did her moving her breast to fit her bra, and one where we moved her skin to add some sense of weight to this character. Now let's look at another situation. So actually I've got a camera set for him, so let's go to head cam. So we've got two things going on here. So we've got a character called Frank, and Frank is wearing a VR mask. I just selected the eye there because I have it set to orbit around. So that means when I rotate, it rotates around the point that I selected. I could have done the eye, could have done the mask, the hair, it doesn't really matter. So we have two problems going on here with Frank. In fact, I'll go to the back view because then you'll be able to see them both when I render. So I'll do a quick render. This is a really common situation. What's happening is wearing a cap and a virtual reality mask just to show two different sides of the same problem. So this is not just a peak, it's a cap that goes over his head, but to make it fit properly on his head, his hair is poking through, and then here we've got a mask that goes around behind his head with a strap. So what we're just going to do, we're going to morph the hair in this situation. So I'm going to grab the hair, so agent hair, then I'm going to create the morph tool, and I'm going to create a new morph, so we'll call this one strap. And then I'm going to do exactly what I did before. I'm going to push relative to surface. I'm going to check the size of it. Okay, so that's way too big for this, so I'm going to reduce that radius. Okay, that's pretty good. Bigger than the strap, but not massive. Now on this particular case, I'm gonna go gently with the magnitude. So I'm just gonna ease it in a bit until I can see the strap showing as if the strap's over his hair. So I'm just kind of brushing back and forwards lightly to make that happen. If I was doing this, okay, now you can see here that the hair's kind of, the scalp is showing through underneath. So what I might do is also do the same thing to his skull, but for now, because I'm lazy, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my hair, and we've got that new morph has been added here to the end of the morphs. It didn't get added all the way at the bottom. It got put inside this list of morphs here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can just dial that morph back a little bit so that the scalp may be there. Let's just give that a quick render. See if that's fixed that at all. There you go. So now the strap has wrapped around the hair. And as you can imagine now, to do the cap is the same thing but on a larger scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the hair is selected again, agent hair, which it is. Now I'm going to create the morph tool, and I'm going to create a new morph following that policy I just said before. Obviously, we may wish to adjust the cap morph differently. I'll call that cap to see the scale I'm working at. Okay, now this time that's way too small. So I'm going to just drag that radius up. Incidentally, earlier on when I talked about the softness and blend of the morph, that's way too big. The softness and blend of the morph, I'm using a soft edged brush. You can use much harder brushes if you want, but a soft edged brush tends to work much better. So I don't know what size I need to be at. Probably about half that. So what about 0.1? Let's have a look. There we go. Okay, so now because all I want to do is hide here, I don't care. Like when I did the hair around this strap, I cared if it went too deep in because the skull would show through. But in this case, the cap is going to be hiding whatever's underneath. So I might as well turn the magnitude right up. Excuse me. Turn the magnitude right up to maximum just to speed it up. And now I'm just going to brush over here, reveal the cap, bit more gently around the edges. Just imagine I'm taking care here rather than just whizzing in. You can see on the back there through the hole in the cap, I've lost the hair entirely, so that doesn't look very realistic. That's okay, there's an easy fix for that. So I'm not going to do the whole thing, this is just a demonstration of concept. And as I move upwards, the brush is moving to the back side as well, which is one of the nice things of this tool. It's really well designed, I like this tool a lot. And I'm just brushing this away, brushing it away. Talking to fill the time. Okay, let's just imagine that I've done the whole thing. And then we have this one little problem area here. So what I need to do here is first things reduce the radius of the brush. So we'll go to half as much. So we'll go down to 0.5-ish. There you go, that'll do. Okay, now instead of push, I'm going to change to pull. Or I could do restore. Oh, okay, of course, when I change tools, the radius resets. Or I could change to restore, which may be equally good. So I'll just for proof of concept, I'll show you restore instead. So this time I don't want the magnitude on full because that's going to be far too fast. I'm going to turn that down to about quarter. That'll do. And I'm going to turn that, what did I say there, 0.5? 0.005 was it? Okay, and now we're just going to brush the hair back in. Okay, maybe more magnitude, because that's going to take forever. But what it's doing is, as you can imagine, is restoring the hair just in that area. I could probably turn and get a better angle on this so it's easier to see. But anyway, look, let me close that down and render that. And hopefully you'll see. Obviously, I didn't take super care on it because it's a tutorial. Yeah, there you go. You can see the hair's been restored here. I probably would just rotate the camera to here just to tidy that up on that side as well. But as you see from that render, that is a million times more useful. And the great thing is, if you do take care and do a 360, you know, you don't always need your figures to be perfect from every angle. If you know you're only ever going to render your scene from this angle, there's no point wasting time making it work from this angle as well. But if you think, very often my best mistakes happen by changing the camera angle to somewhere that I didn't expect to be viewing the scene from. So if you think you might be experimenting with your camera angle or animating is a really good situation, then it's worth tidying the whole thing up here. Okay, now let's just do the last example. So we're going to go to chair kid. So little boy sitting on a chair. Oops. And I just want to select his body. So obviously he's floating above the chair at the moment because if I put him, his weight is somewhere here just a little bit above his bottom. So that would be, in real life, that would be probably where he'd sit. He'd be pushing the chair down with his mass. But the trouble is, of course, his legs clip into the chair. So you might be thinking, well, the simple solution is just to do what I just showed you, which is select the chair, use the morph tool, create a morph, we'll call that cushion. I hope that's how you spell cushion. Change that to push, so we're going to push downwards into the chair. Make sure the radius is big enough. Let's have a look at the radius there. Probably, for this one, I'm going to go large but not too big. How big is too big? Well, the problem here, when we're working with furniture, can you see that brush is pushing down into the bottom half of the cushion here? So when I'll turn that right up so as you can see that effect. When I start to morph this, it can very often morph the geometry at the bottom as well. So that's kind of okay actually. Probably a bit too much, but see it's kind of squished in here. If I do a quick render there, it might be a bit more apparent. So that doesn't look terrible, I'll be honest. This front cushion here, because it's morphing relative to the surface, that front cushion, the front cushion pushes inwards towards the back, the top cushion pushes downwards, and probably the in between the cushions, the chair, that's probably done some morphing as well. So that is a suboptimal solution for this situation. Now, there is another solution using the morph tool. I'm going to undo that. So here's my cushion morph. Right, so that's not applied, but it's at 1, but I've not actually applied any morphing. So there's a couple of ways around that. First one is to reduce the size of your brush so that it only works in the plane that you want it to work in, which sometimes works. But look, as soon as I come around to make that realistic at the front, it kind of starts pushing inwards as well. That's one possibility, but let me show you another problem with that. So if I take the kid and make him invisible, oh, and his shorts, okay. You might see that's not a very tidy morph. It's kind of lumpy and not even, yeah? Whereas his body would be pushing down wherever his butt cheeks are, basically, and then some lighter depressions where his feet are, and it depends where his weight is, forwards, backwards, even, whatever, you know? So there is another solution, and what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you two things here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that morph. So he doesn't need to be visible, I don't think. So if I choose kid, no, I'm going to choose the chair. It's a prop, chair 1. Incidentally, so here's that cushion morph. Remember, I could just reduce it here. Or, oh, that's an interesting thing. I forgot to mention that. If you go in the opposite direction, it reverses the morph in the opposite direction, which can be nice. Supposing you've got, say, you're doing a breast, which we did earlier, or a nose or something like that, you might want, or suppose this was a trampoline, boing, boing, boing. So that can be useful, okay? If you want to delete that morph entirely, because it does add to the size of the chair, you can just go to here and then choose delete morph here. I will just show you one more thing, by the way. So you see that's kind of a little bit rough, and if we look at this in hidden line, you'll see there's not millions of polygons in this chair. So again, as I'm always talking about, you may wish to subdivide that by a level to add more polygons, just so it's softer. So that's far more polygons than you need, but just for example, okay? I'm going to go back to the default level for now, and I'm going to actually delete that morph. I'm going to show you another way of achieving the same thing. So I'm deleting chair 1 cushion morph. This time, the reason I don't use what I'm about to show you is because it can be a pain to set up. But I've got the chair to set. I've got the chair. I choose Object, Create Magnet. Now this magnet, the size of the magnet is relative to the size of the object, but that's way too big for this. But for really the important part, the size of the magnet I don't think affects the size of the magnetism, but it just makes it easier or harder to see. So if I take the magnet comprises 3 parts: magnet base, magnet 1, and magnet zone. If I change the scale of magnet base, it will change the size of magnet 1, but the zone will remain the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale that magnet base, which you can't see at the moment because it's in the floor, just down so it's a bit easier to see the rest of the scene. But this is the important bit, this zone here, that shows the area of influence for the magnet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale that down in both axes until it's roughly the width of where I want the depression. Then I'm going to scale it in the Y direction downwards. And in this case, I'm going to go full wireframe because I want to see inside the object, see how deep that's going. And I'm just going to move that up so that it's not, although in this particular case, it doesn't matter if I move the underlying chair here, but supposing I didn't want to affect the frame of the chair as well. So now I'm going to go back to hidden line, and I've got my magnet and my magnet base here. So I've just affected the magnet zone. I'm going to take my magnet base and, oh, I should have left that on hidden line, sorry, because I want to see what the base is doing. And the magnet base is in the cushion now. And now I'm going to choose the magnet and I'm going to move that. And you see how that moves the whole chair? Now, what I love about magnets compared to, you can see that dragging the back here. What I love about magnets compared to morphs is that magnets are fully editable afterwards. I don't mean just that you can say 100% or 300% or go in the opposite direction, but you can also change the zone of influence, you can change the direction, you can change everything. So they're a bit like morphs on steroids. Now, morphs let you do much finer detail without much messing about. You can still do magnets. You could do dozens of magnets, but it's really time consuming to set up, so it's easier to use morphs a lot of the time. But you'll see that this magnet has kind of dragged the back of the chair down. Now in this particular case it doesn't matter because it's going straight down, but here's the way to fix that, is I just move that zone forwards and you can see the influence area on the chair. See that deforming? So I just deform that. Now I'm going to go back to my textured shaded. So the magnet remains visible as long as the chair is selected. You can make it invisible up in display, but there's no need. It's fine to leave visible. And then I'm going to bring kid back in. Kid body visible. And there you go. Okay, so maybe bring that magnet forwards a little tiny bit more. Okay, so let's select the chair. Get that zone a bit more forwards maybe. There you go, just softening that down a little bit. Okay, and I could mess about. I could even combine both. I could do a morph and I could do a magnet. So I could do a morph for the toes and a magnet for the general depression. Okay, so that's a little bit deep. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to select the magnet. I'm going to go a little bit up there. And now I'll mess about with that over time. So there you go, guys. Let's give the poor little guy some shorts to finish off with. Make those visible and render that again. It's not perfect, obviously. This is more a demonstration of concept rather than a demonstration of perfection. And you'll see that was the kind of rough morph with the feet, and that honestly wasn't too bad using the morph tool. And this is using the magnet, which is sometimes a more subtle way of doing it. Okay, I'm not going to demonstrate it now, but I am just going to mention it. See his shorts here? There probably isn't a morph connected with his shorts to get them to hide from the back of his legs. But using the morph tool, I could probably just raise that bit of shorts here so that it fits his leg a bit better. Put some kind of pseudo wrinkles in. So that's another example. Again, where his hands are on his face, I could put a little bit of pressure there on his face. So it really is a very versatile tool.